Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with the Green Scorpion for another round of Weapons Month. Tonight, well, hope you trained your body because we got the top 10 video game martial artists. These guys pretty much can kick your butt anyways till Sunday, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so basically they don't need no weapon, they got it in their hands. Or at least their bodies. Anyway, so let's see which martial artist takes the top crown. So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go. Said. This should be fun. Here we go. Let's start off.
Hello everyone, the Green Scorpion here, and before we get into it, I want to express a sincere thank you to all of you for your views and your patience. I know the title of the series is Weapons Month, but life caught up to me, and as a result, I haven't had as much time to myself as I would have hoped. So this time, you can just use month as a metaphorical term. That being said, it's finally time. After 4 videos, after some of the least conventional weapons imaginable, it's finally time to close Weapons Month 3 by, ironically, looking at those who use no weapon. None, that is, except for the one essential tool, the human body. We love weapons in video games, and some games are entirely based around them. But here and there, we have those characters who don't need a sword or a spear to be their own brand of awesome. Sometimes an entire game is based around clashing fists, and other times, among a battalion of lancers and wizards, a simple monk emerges that can fight just as well without all of that fancy timber and steel. Whether they be masters of taekwondo, ninjutsu, boxing, or self-taught mindless flailing, we're looking for the most powerful of pugilists. This was probably the toughest weapons list I've ever ranked, so I had to lay down some loose ground rules. We're looking for balanced martial artists. These brawlers need a combination of speed, strength, technique, and if possible, a unique style. We are only looking at humanoid characters of reasonable size. Technically, Ridley can fight without weapons, but he's an alien dragon with wings and a razor-sharp tail, which kind of ruins the grading curve. And it's one thing to be big like Mike Hagar, but being big like Kronos isn't really playing fair. The less dependent on items, the better. If a character sometimes uses a weapon like, say, Mario with his hammer, we will simply ignore the hammer and look at how he fights without it. Wearing knuckles, gloves, or other similar equipment are okay if they are suited to directly help punch and kick. Finally, we are trying to keep magic and superpowers at a minimum, with the high concept exception of ki and aura-based abilities. It's hard to definitively organize what is and isn't ki, depending on the rules of each game's universe, but basically it's an inner energy that makes up all life, that any person through enough dedication can learn to master. Things like shooting chi, flash stepping to get somewhere super fast, maintaining one's own metabolism to self-heal, and all of those D&D monk shenanigans. Oh, and I don't care how ridiculous a character's fighting style is. If they're skilled enough to defy the laws of physics, that's all good by me. But enough semantics. Put up your dukes. This is the top 10 greatest martial artists in video games.
Start the fight! TJ. Here we go. First up.
And after I spend so much time explaining the rules to you, my first pick challenges my criteria, but he kind of fits, and damn it, I really want to talk about Persona. Akihiko Sanada is an upperclassman at Gekkoukan High School, laid back but hardworking, practically unaware of the drove of teenage girls flocking behind him. He's also a member of a very extracurricular school club, SEES, a band of students who fight against the dark forces called Shadows that torment humanity. Akihiko is captain of the school's boxing team. As a boy, he grew up in an orphanage with his lifelong friend Shinjiro and his little sister Miki, until one fateful day the orphanage burned down. Akihiko was unable to rescue his sister from the burning wreckage, and from then on vowed to become as strong as he could be to protect the ones he loved. He trains fervently, and is always seen bandaged or stitched up from one of his training accidents. He appears many times throughout the series, most notably as a party character in Persona 3 and as a playable fighter in Persona 4 Arena.
And
in a party where characters use swords and various other weapons, Akihiko prefers to duel supernatural creatures with nothing but his trusty gloves. Well,
she could
maybe he uses
fight
a
that
little
too,
more.
but she mostly
Here's
uses
where
her
we get into
legs.
the controversy. His persona. The evil shadows are composed of human emotions, usually man's greatest doubts and insecurities. If a notable individual like Akihiko can embrace their faults, they can deputize their shadow into their own persona, which gives them special boosts and occasionally casts spells or fights for them. Akihiko does well enough without his persona. In fact, in Arena, his moveset revolves the least around persona moves and is based instead off of chaining combos to fill up his cyclone gauge. Still, the persona is a little iffy. It makes sense in the world of Shin Megami Tensei because the persona's power does come from the user's own heart, but I still would feel bad putting him any higher. While we're here though, let me talk about his persona real quick, because it's got that kind of mythological symbolism that I always enjoy. His persona at the beginning of the game is Polydeuces, who in Roman mythology was also known as Pollux, the son of Zeus and the twin brother of Castor, even though Castor had a different father. Pollux was blessed with immortality by Zeus, whereas Castor was not. I mention this because it just so happens that Castor is the name of Shinjiro's persona, and his relationship with Akihiko is that of a brother. In mythology, after Castor dies, Polydeuces begs Zeus that Castor share his immortality, Zeus takes pity, and the two brothers are made immortal, transformed into the constellation we all know as Gemini. This kind of preordained Shinjiro's fate. After a tragic accident, Shinjiro is mortally injured and Akihiko has come into terms with failing to protect another person. But finding the strength to journey on, his persona transforms into the even mightier form Caesar. I kind of wish it was called Gemini, but it does bear a resemblance to both Polydeuces and Castor. I like Akihiko because he is a hard worker, he fights for his loved ones, and for the most part he relies only on his left hook and his right jab. But every once in a while, he does this. Mr. Sonata, please report to the principal's office. Murdering is cause for suspension.
If only. Yeah, they're fine, don't worry. Be surprised what's...
If you're looking to indulge in a guilty pleasure for senseless violence,
Is that
look
Mad
no
World?
further than Mad World.
Oh yeah,
Here you'll
I
find
remember
some of
this.
the bloodiest battles between some of the craziest combatants in video game history. And perhaps none come crazier than the Black Baron. He's the stereotypical pimp who invented the particularly violent minigames, the Bloodbath Challenges. Before each segment, he explains the rules with the help of his horribly dressed assistant, and often becomes an unwilling example, but despite supposedly dying a gruesome death each time, he's always raring to go by the next round. That is, until the game's finale, when we discovered that he is the Death Watch champion, and he brings the pain with a mean right hook and a meaner backhand. Like Akihiko, the Baron is first and foremost a boxer, doling out some lightning-fast pummels and some other dirty tricks. I mean, look at the size of those
So basically,
rings.
the dirty
I hope
boxer.
you like diamond-shaped holes in your ribs.
Ouch.
Unlike Akihiko, he does eventually start working in some pretty impressive kicks into the mix. And he does this.
And high fly. Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, our first Hadouken of the evening. Don't worry, it won't be the last. He's unyieldingly fierce in the ring, and despite being turned into a man-dart, he and his sexy fists of fire return to Anarchy reigns. There's also a lot more I can get into with this character. His crude stereotypical nature is a perfect microcosm to just how blatantly racially insensitive this game is. I mean, Asian Town? Really? But I think blunt audacity is kind of what this game is going for. There's also the speculation that he's actually a white man in black makeup, but I don't buy that. I mean, Kreese is the one who tells us that, and I don't think he's a reputable source of information.
Awesome rock on her, though.
Not now, Kreese.
Shut
Video
up,
game
Chris.
martial arts are pretty ridiculous, so in the end, the Baron gets the spot for having a personality as nonsensical as his attacks.
You better recognize.
Let me know. These guys. Man, look at TJ. Okay, sorry, I completely forgot track. Sorry. So, could have expected a few more, but I guess I must have missed one. Weird, but I guess they must have mismounted them. Anyway, so yeah, Akihiko and Black Baron. Interesting to say the least. So I'm guessing with 7 might be a tie, but we'll see. And just pause and just be on the
When
safe
you talk
side.
about Mad World, you're bound to start thinking about that other game.
Hi, No More
You know,
Heroes.
the other Wii exclusive, surprisingly profane, hilariously violent hack and slash in which the hero progresses up a ranking system by killing those ranked above him. That's right, it's No More Heroes, and the UAA's #1 ranked assassin, Darkstar.
Oh, not anymore. Oof. Oh, whoa, literally. Yeesh.
Scratch that. Jean. In the final moments of
Yeah.
No More Heroes, Travis
The first
confronts
one.
his arch enemy, the girl who killed his parents,
AKA
who
sister.
just so happens to be his half-sister. She's
Yeah.
been training her whole life, and it really shows. Jean's style is a mix of taijutsu and kickboxing, gravitating around brutal spin kicks. Her attacks constantly emit this menacing light, and her blinding speed allows her to whip behind Travis in an instant. Despite fighting on a sandy desert, she can use a single dash and then slide along like she's on ice. Then
Yeah.
suddenly stop on a dime and change directions. And when she starts getting desperate, she'll start combining her dashes with a 3-strike pattern that gets really hard to avoid. Her strange power over the laws of traction are just the tip of the sandberg, though. Don't even think about using your grapples. She can reverse any hold and punish anyone who thinks they can tangle with a champ.
Really?
On the more presentational side of things, she's not afraid to taunt her opponent to get them to drop their guard. Really mean taunts, too. And in the cutscenes, she spears her arm through someone's chest not
More
once,
crotch.
but twice. Kalima indeed. For a franchise with such novel weapons as a sniper scythe and the flamethrower axe,
What the
it's nice to see someone
Ooh.
willing to rumble with nothing but her arms and legs. If only she weren't such a psychotic.
Harsh but fair. Okay, yeah, I guess it was an accidental one. Anyway.
The developers at Riot stated that
Hello,
it was
League of
very
Legends.
challenging to incorporate a traditional martial artist into the League of Legends, but it paid off. That's right, number 7 goes to Lee Sin, the Blind Monk.
Ah, the monk.
Lee Sin's backstory, first of all, is one of the most cleverly detailed.
Okay.
Lee was actually training to be a summoner for the League. He excelled at magic and soon grew weary of the slow curriculum and the lethargic pace of his fellow students, so he prematurely attempted to summon a beast from the Plague Lands. In his
Oh boy.
haste and naivete, he bungled the ritual, and his spell backlashed, destroying
Ouch.
a small village and killing hundreds. With that much blood on his hands, Lee Sin was pretty hard on himself, leaving the school and retreating to a monastery in Ionia, where he lived in near seclusion for many years. Though he trained physically, his real intent was to discipline his mind and spirit, which led to him gaining complete mastery over the energies of his body. The monk only re-emerged into society when he heard of the tyranny in Noxus-occupied Ionia. As part of a protest, he went into a public square, doused himself in oil, and set himself on fire in protest, refusing to let himself be extinguished until Noxus fully withdrew from Ionia. This eventually led to a league rematch between the two governments and finally to the full liberation of Ionia. During this time, Lee Sin spent 2 months burning alive, his Shojin training keeping him alive, but he was still able to feel every second of agony. If this sounds ridiculous, this story arc is actually based on the acts of the real-life monk Quang Duc, who
Quang Duc?
burned himself alive in 1963 in the protest of the persecution of Buddhists in southern Vietnam. Lee Sin has since almost been fully recovered, though the flames permanently claimed his eyes. Thus, Lee Sin humbly wears the title, the Blind Monk. The trope of the blind fighter has been around for some time now. Daredevil, Toph, and the like have all heightened their senses to make them perfectly
True.
able to fight, and Lee Sin is no exception. In Lee's case, he is so in tune with not only his own energy, but with the energy of all living things around him. He might as well have 20/20 vision. And
Pretty
though
much.
he's not physically as strong as some of his barehanded competition, he's got some fun moves up his pants sleeve.
Considering he's
Having
like,
sworn off
training as
magic,
supposed to
Lee
summoner
Sin instead
and a
expends
martial artist?
energy to use
Holy
abilities, rather than mana. His abilities are each double-faceted. For example, his Q, Sonic Wave, shoots a Hadouken, and if it hits an enemy, you can press Q again to use Resonating Strike, a flying kick that locks onto the target, traveling even through walls to get to them.
Damn.
If he has a nearby ally, he can use the move Safeguard, which lets Lee Sin jump to his ally and shield the two of them. Between Resonating Strike and Safeguard, Lee Sin is ridiculously mobile, and some of his greatest plays in League history have come from pro Lee Sin players hopping around like a heat-seeking Jackie Chan. Lee Sin can also
Accurate.
slow enemies in a wave around him by pounding the ground, and his ultimate, Dragon's Rage, is a roundhouse kick of Chuck Norris proportions that send his target
So you-
flying back. It's not the most impressive ultimate at first glance, but it's kind of the brilliance of Lee Sin. You have to look deeper. Lee is probably the hardest champ in the game to learn. He's so well-rounded that it's not obvious how to build his items, and his combo-based moveset will be useless to novice players. Heck, I consider myself pretty decent in League and I can barely scrape together kills with him. But like a martial art, those who master Lee unlock a hidden power that is unmatched. Oh, and fun fact, I also considered listing Udyr on here, but then I remembered that Udyr was trained by Lee Sin. If that's not a reason to list him, I don't know what is.
No kidding. Gotta go with the blind monk here. Makes sense. Next, number 6.
Martial arts have advanced in the past few millennia, but unarmed combat is certainly more primitive than using a sword or a scythe. Or paint. It doesn't get much more primitive than Ayla from Chrono Trigger.
Oh, yeah,
in the year 65 million BC, Ayla
Woman.
leads the Ioka tribe with courage, strength, and unmatched ferocity. For some odd reason, Ayla's art in the game depicts her with a club, and the PS1 and DS remakes of Chrono Trigger have her using a club in her cutscene. But in-game, she fights completely unarmed. In fact, it's impossible to equip any weapons to her. While other characters fight with swords or bows or guns, Ayla's weapon slot is permanently occupied by her fists. This weapon gets stronger as she levels up, increasing in power and critical hit rate. By the time she's level capped, her critical hit goes up by 35% frequency and always deals 9,999 damage, the most damage of any attack in the game. Ayla's style of fighting is like a cross between a tiger and a gorilla, with a lot of clawing and overhead pounds. Her garment, made from the pelts of her best hunts, gives her a kind of artificial tail that she occasionally uses to tail whip. Ayla has the highest physical power of the party, even more than the battle robot, and is the second most defensive.
Than the robot.
While her techs mostly involve dealing more physical damage, there are two notable exceptions. Ayla can kiss her party mates to restore a small amount of their hit points, because kissing always makes it feel better, and she can also charm baddies in order to snag random items off of them. This makes Ayla extremely versatile. She is the highest damage dealer, but she also serves as the team's thief, an off healer, and has enough survivability to use some resurrection items if the other two party members fall. She can also call in a dinosaur to tail smash the entire field, but that pales in comparison to her own feral fury. Rolling kicks, throwing boulders, savagely clawing at the enemy's face, the aforementioned tailspin, and the dreaded triple kick are all at Ayla's disposal to cave in some heads. To put it into perspective, Ayla's average day involves her slaying dinosaurs. With the bane of reptiles who help fight back the apocalypse, Ayla is literally a fighter of the ages.
I mean, you gotta be strong to be able to fight, dinosaurs with only your fists. And those have tough hides.
It should come as no surprise that some entrants are from fighting games. Burning his way into the top 5 is Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat. Though he certainly had competition from others like Sonya Blade and Johnny Cage, the Shaolin monk's accomplishments and ridiculous martial arts make him the clear choice for me. Hailing from Earthrealm, specifically China, he was trained by the legendary Bo Rai Cho. And despite his chief influence being a fat, drunken hermit, Liu Kang rose to become a mighty bicycle-kicking master of Shaolin Kung Fu. And seriously, those bicycle kicks. You have to be pretty coordinated to spin your legs while flying horizontally across a screen several yards at a perfect 0-degree angle. He is unmistakably based off of the movie legend Bruce Lee, and exhibits the same kung fu style complete with theatrical flying kicks. But like most mortal combatants, he developed more of his own characteristics from MK2 onward, both visually and as a character. Besides his fantastic footwork, Liu Kang is notable for being one of the most respected warriors from Earthrealm. In canon, he is the victor of the Mortal Kombat tournament 4 times over. So almost exclusively by his acts, the Earth has been safe from invasion by Outworld. Keep in mind that Liu Kang is just an average guy. True, his extra teacher may have unlocked a hidden fire mastery within him, so he works dragon flames and burning Hadokens into a lot of his attacks, and has a tendency to set himself ablaze to add speed and power. And yes, he does transform into a dragon occasionally, but that's a fatality. Which, I'll remind you all, he only uses it after he's effectively won the match by physical strength alone. In a tournament with Thunder Gods, Hove Demons, and Striker using a freaking pistol, Liu Kang has the gall to walk in, head held high, and try to kick them all to death. It took the combined efforts of Shang Tsung and Quan Chi, two sorcerers, to finally pacify him, turning him into a zombie that, because it retained Kang's muscle memory, was nearly unstoppable. It also retained Kang's ear-splitting battle cry, so the difference was hardly noticeable. But the monk's soul found his way back to his body and now lives to save the world again in MK9. Other endings in different games throughout the series see Kang becoming a new Guardian of Earthrealm, being hired as Raiden's personal bodyguard. That's right, the Thunder God Raiden wants this mortal to be his bodyguard. And in one scenario, Liu Kang's mind, body, and spirit grows so mighty that he actually ascends to godhood. Dude, my monk in Dungeons and Dragons was never that good, and he was nearly level 20. And this guy's only number 5. Oh boy.
I mean, there are others with, you know, X and 11, so I'm not sure what their endings were. I don't remember. Alright, next.
Just picking one character from the Tekken series was no easy task, with
Heihachi.
Martial Law and Eddie Gordo being some of my top picks. But eventually, I had to settle with the granddaddy of them all, the man without whom none of the Tekken series would be possible. Still knocking heads in his mid-70s, it's Heihachi Mishima. Someone at Namco really turned up the ridiculous dial with this guy. And the results are so awesome that they're kind of stupid. Heihachi is the president of the omnipowerful Mishima Corporation, driving his father Jinpachi's once respectable business into a militarized Zaibatsu with the influence of a first world nation. If I could sum him up in one word, it would be ruthless. As a father to Kazuya, he beats and batters the poor kid in all attempts to toughen him up, and when he isn't satisfied, he throws the 5-year-old into a ravine, claiming that if he is worthy of living, he will survive the fall and climb his way back out. And Kazuya does by making a deal with the devil and contracting demonic powers, setting into motion the entire Tekken series. Heihachi developed his own martial art form, known as the Mishima-style karate. It may look like just a bunch of lumbering, tactless swings, but it's actually a very honed, incredibly powerful moveset that's great for air juggling opponents, bouncing them off the ground, and racking up physical trauma in a merciless bombardment. Mishima also teaches his fighting style to series protagonist Jin Kazama, as well as a lot of bears. And it's plain to see that Heihachi better reflects the latter. Sure, Zangief wrestles wild grizzlies for fun, but Heihachi trains and regiments them. And yes, Kazuya and Jin have both defeated Heihachi on occasion, but they needed demonic powers to even keep up with Grandpa here. And at the end of Tekken 1, Kazuya throws Heihachi off of the same mountain he was thrown off of as revenge, but Heihachi, through sheer willpower, claws his way out without the need of any newfangled devil gene. Probably the best moment of Heihachi hilarity comes from the animated movie. He's giving this speech when Michelle Chang tries to kill him by lobbing a stone axe at him, so of course Heihachi can duck, or maybe deflect it with his hand, or... Oh man, he just ate the freaking axe!
More like just broke
Sure, he never ascended to godhood, but Heihachi still trumps Liu Kang on one vital point, which is in that I'm pretty sure Heihachi would kick Liu Kang's ass. Feel free to argue that point in the comments.
Well, to be fair, we did see a death battle with the guy, and he beat Geese Howard, so... I'm sure that's a good metric of, like, you know, winning, but... You know, if Heihachi ever comes back, it would be kind of cool to see him fight Liu Kang now. Thanks, Oscar. Really appreciate it. I mean, hey, the top Mortal Kombat contestant taking on the ultimate Tekken fighter. Why not? I'd be able to see that. Anyway, final 3, here we go. Guess he had to reset the combo. Number 3.
Now, before I go on, let me say that the top 3 of this list was so close, I actually had to change it twice. I finally had to base it off of the criteria that if these guys fought, who would emerge victorious? With that, we come to our number 3 and maybe the most classic game example of a martial artist. Ryu from Street Fighter.
There we go. The man that popularized Hadouken and Shoryuken!
Street Fighter 2 was the game that really established the conventions of an arcade tournament fighter, and similarly, Ryu is the quintessential pugilist. Despite being basically the first thing you think of when it comes to video game barehanded fighters, Ryu still holds the distinction of being one of the best. On the surface, he seems a little run-of-the-mill, at least character-wise, and there's a simple dignity of his story. He plays the part of a wandering warrior, traveling the land without wealth, supplies, or even shoes, training whenever he can, and always on the lookout for an interesting stranger for some friendly sparring. He has a fiery will to become the greatest martial artist in the world, which he defines as being able to best as many other world warriors as he can in fair combat. His opponents include the many others who were considered for this list. Russian bear wrestlers, Turkish oil wrestlers, Japanese sumo wrestlers, whatever the hell Blanca is, and a longtime friend and rival Ken Masters. In Street Fighter II, he is incredibly stern, which causes others to sigh at his humorlessness. However, his friends Ken and Chun-Li have rubbed off on him, and by Street Fighter III, he is much more sociable and has a more laid-back attitude, though his diligence and drive remain unfettered.
So let's say about the Street
His
Fighter
fighting style,
movie,
passed
the
down
better.
by the Master Goken,
those
has
two
become
were
the common
scam
style
artists,
for
to say the
Street
least,
Fighter
too.
characters, with numerous imitators, but none demonstrate the fundamentals quite so well. His signature moves include the Shoryuken, a fearsome uppercut, and the
dragon
Tatsumaki Sampukyaku, a gravity-defying move that
Sampukyaku.
earns its translation of Hurricane Kick.
Yep.
He also exhibits a roundhouse
Sampukyaku.
kick that even Lee Sin could take notes on. From these
Ganso
not-so-basic building blocks,
Kutagari.
Ryu's built a veritable library of unique moves during his campaign to be in every Street Fighter game, every Capcom vs. title, and several other fighting game spin-offs. One move of note is the Metsu Shoryuken. Every time I see that, I cringe. The cornerstone of Ryu's moveset is the Hadoken, this being the game that coined the term. I've already mentioned how Lee Sin and Liu Kang have trained their bodies and spirits so rigorously that they're practically one, and thus can manifest their spiritual energy as projectiles. The Hadoken, translated roughly as wave motion punch, is no different. Ryu throws a fireball-shaped blast that simulated the punching in his stomach of someone several feet away. Ryu's mind, body, and spirit are truly one, and so he can channel his power into more than just a cheap reusable range spam. There's the Shakunetsu Hadoken, the Ren Hadoken, the Baku Hadoken, the Hado Hadoken, and the Shinku Hadoken, just to name a few. It's a great power indeed, but it comes at a cost. Having awoken his latent power within, Ryu now holds the responsibility to keep it from consuming him. If his power, the Satsui no Hado, is not kept in balance through constant exercise and meditation, Ryu will lose himself to his inner darkness the same way Akuma did. Bearing the weight of his own dark potential, Ryu traverses the planet on foot, collecting lasting friendships and defending the weak and downtrodden wherever he may go. If I could, I would make him number 1, but these next two just narrowly beat him out. Don't be sad, Ryu. Would you like some pound cake to make you feel better?
I'd like some pound cake!
I'd like some pound cake! I'd like some pound cake! I'd like some pound cake! I'd like some pound cake!
Seriously? Alright, here we go. Number 2. Let's see who's topping Ryu.
It's kind of a trend now for RPGs to have at least one unarmed monk character in the party. Truth be told, it's not really fair to Ryu. Sure, Ryu goes up against opponents like M. Bison and Gil, not foes to be taken lightly, but in an RPG, we see growth in a character, all the way up to a level cap of around 99. So, it's no disrespect to Ryu, but you can't expect him to compete with the monks from Final Fantasy. The question is, which monk do we pick? Yang? Tifa? Snow? Zell? Yeah, I shouldn't pretend this was a hard choice. It's Sabin from Final Fantasy VI. A prince of Castle Figaro, Sabin and his twin brother Edgar inherited the kingdom at a young age. But Sabin wasn't the type for politics or sleeves, so he ran away to the mountains. Like how Ryu has his master Goken, Sabin learned martial arts from a reclusive hermit named Duncan. But when his master is allegedly killed by another pupil, Sabin puts his skills to use, helping his brother and the resistance to overthrow the Empire. Sabin is very limited with his equipment. He can only wear light armor, and his only weapons are fists and claws to augment his own physical power. Through the Magicite system, it is possible to teach Sabin any spell in the game, but it's not the best way to go given his middling magic stats and small MP pool. His real potential comes from a character-specific skill set called Blitz, where the player inputs a button command to use a variety of hidden techniques. Let's just name a few. Aura Cannon, which looks like Ryu's Shinku Hadoken and requires a similar button input, and Razor Gale, where Sabin repeatedly karate chops fast enough to slice the air and cut through targets several yards away. He is adept with his own cosmic energy as well as that of his teammates, allowing him to use chakra to heal others and Soul Spiral to fully restore his friends at the expense of his own vitality. His ultimate technique, Phantom Rush, is not only very powerful but ignores the defense of its target. But that's not nearly as cool as the Meteor Strike, which lets Sabin suplex anything, even the Phantom Train. Yeah, I know everyone jokes about that, but did you know that when he's confused, Sabin can even suplex himself?
Wow.
He may be brash and prefers to leave the trivial matters like strategy and planning to his tech head brother, but his acrobats, physical prowess, and mystical blitzes make him the best martial artist in gaming. Almost.
Yeah, keyword almost. He's only second, so... Now I'm curious about the number one.
Let's face it, going barehanded is an inherent disadvantage. To fight this way against someone with a sword or magic spells or even just a rock, you are overcoming a Darwinian adversity. And maybe that's why these pugilists are so engaging to me. Because they fight with self-imposed limits. Lee Sin was almost a great summoner but gave up all that spellcraft. Ayla never has magic power at all but insists on battling robots and demons. Ryu chooses not to rely on his more potent, darker energies, and Sabin shuns all of the kingdom's guns and chainsaws in favor of pure inner strength. Liu Kang had a brief stint where he swore to finish off opponents non-lethally, and even Heihachi, with all of his company's tanks and missile copters, prefers to settle his matters knuckle to knuckle. It's a metaphorical hand tied behind their back. But, how about a literal hand? Or how about both hands, bound together by stainless steel?
This ought to be good.
The number one spot can only go to Regal Brian from Tales of Symphonia. Regal didn't come from the most humble of beginnings either. In fact, he was the president of the Lezerano Company, making him one of the richest men in the world. Why are so many of these monks would-be billionaires? In his spare time, he trained in the trouble fighting style, turning his hands into lethal weapons. He was also in love with Alicia Combatir, Preseia's sister, who was working on an X-Sphere experimentation project. But a string of crazy events saw her turned into a mindless monster, and out of self-defense, Regal was forced to kill her. Even though the experimentation on Alicia wasn't his doing, Regal felt such guilt that he took full responsibility for her death, turned himself into the authorities, and vowed never to use his hands for violence ever again. He spent many years in prison, quietly brooding, but when he was paroled with the chance to stop others from repeating similar atrocities, he is left with a dilemma. How does he fight for his beliefs without breaking his vow and use his destructive fists? Simple. Regal is going to fight using only his feet. When fighting alongside Lloyd and the gang, Regal can be seen kicking like a Hitmonlee trained by Brazilian jiu-jitsu masters, all the while with his hands chained together. And this guy is ripped. We know he could break those wimpy handcuffs if he wanted to. Even when he makes amends with Preseia, he decides not to free himself from the cuffs until after his quest is complete. Regal is unique among the party. His arts work by being chained together. Some of his moves can only be used in mid-air or are designed to juggle, so playing Regal is akin to playing a Rekka character in a fighting game, like Fei Long or Iron Fist. For using only his feet, he displays an unfathomable amount of control. Some moves like Heaven's Charge and Mirage functions as sort of a cross-counter. He's also got an entire subset of anti-air moves. He's got the medical jiu-jitsu factor working for him with abilities like Chi Healer and Grand Healer in his back pocket. Naturally, Regal returns in the game's sequel, Unchained at Last, but still refuses to throw a punch. Instead, he works his arms into his angular momentum to improve his spinning kicks. With all of this going for him, he's almost as impressive as Ryu or Sabin. If only he could use Hadouken. But sadly, he's never been able to... Holy crap. Seriously? He could do that the entire time?
Yeah.
He's got enough strength and karmic fortitude to effortlessly puncture refined Magitech forged steel bars. Imagine what that would do to, say, I don't know, a human skull. He'll use this from time to time on inanimate objects, but refuses to use any of that power on living creatures, or even random monsters. He doesn't have any qualms beating them to death with his shins, but pugilistic violence is right out. The tipping factor for Regal is that as powerful as he seems, as high as you level him, as godlike as his pedal dexterity becomes, you know he's still holding back, and there's an even greater strength lying dormant. Honorable, disciplined, and unstoppable, Regal Brian just narrowly takes a spot as the #1 greatest martial artist in video games. I am the Green Scorpion, and thank you guys for joining me for Weapons Month 3. Until next time.
You're on. Well, makes sense. I mean, dude's fighting like just barefoot. Well, just using his feet, and he's still able to win. So, I definitely say that earns him some points. So, let me know what you guys think. And until next time, like, subscribe for more. And until then, adios.